morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry we're a little bit in the dark today. I'm not sure what's going on there, but anyway, you're gonna watch in the dark until Nathan gets that fixed. But I think you can kind of see there, and we'll be good. We'll go with it. How's that? As we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions and have, no doubt, a good time doing it. It's the end of the Dapper.Dot week, and we've got, what have we got here? We've got, well, eventually we'll get there. We got it now, and this is the Dapper.Dot Commodore, ladies and gentlemen. Has a nice, naval look to it, if it wasn't dark, you could see that that's what we've got there. So we are ready for your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And we'll look forward to taking those, seeing what's on your mind. Like Nancy's question about Zionism and some other questions that will come in, and some that we have waiting in the wings for us. And look forward to that. Let's see, where are we? I do have one so far. I have a friend who, this is Friday, we do Psychobabble with Dr. White on Fridays. If you have a Psychobabble question, then we will do Psychobabble with Dr. White towards the end of the program. And as we consider that, oh yeah, that's right. There's our theme for today. Men love darkness rather than light. in our dark broadcast today. It's a dark, dark day in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, welcome. Glad you're here. If you would like, and I have a friend who, just go ahead and put it in if you are watching live, and that's where we'll take those, is in the live broadcast. You might put the word question, and then I have a friend who. We'll talk about, psychological issues. What's with their relationships? They cry over onions. They get mad at the slightest thing. What is it? You bring that up, and we will go with it and look at some of those fun things. Now we'll go and get started on it here in our biblical, theological, and worldview questions. Why don't we start with, let's see. Sorry, I got to do a little refresh there. Something went awry in the night, and for some reason I only have Worshified chats here, and I would like to have all of the chats. There, I got them. How about that? Let's start with San Juan, Puerto Rico. And a question that, my apologies, has been sitting there in the hopper for a little while. And let's bring that out. Now all I got to do is find the question, which is here, somewhere. Somewhere. I was so close to it. Here we go. Matthew chapter 11, verses 23 and 24. And thou, Capernaum, which art exalted unto heaven, shalt be brought down to hell. For if the mighty works which have been done in thee had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I say unto you, that it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment than for thee. What a scathing remark to Capernaum. And let's remember that in Capernaum, up to Mark chapter 5, where we are in our Mark series, Capernaum, they rose up and called Jesus blessed. They loved him there. And yet now Jesus gives this condemnation towards Matthew chapter 11, which is towards the end of the ministry. So the question I had asked, what it means in Matthew 11, 23 through 24, that comparing Capernaum with Sodom, more tolerable than Sodom. Okay, what does this mean here? Well, let's again take a look. Thou Capernaum. No doubt he's talking about the literal city of Capernaum, which art exalted unto heaven. You know, really, Capernaum had more benefits than any locale, I will say, in all of history. Capernaum was the headquarters of Jesus' ministry. If you go to the ruins of Capernaum today, there's a sign right there. It says Capernaum, the town of Jesus. Capernaum, more than any other place, is the place where the miracles took place. If you're ever on Jeopardy and they say, where did the miracle of blah, blah, blah take place, and you don't know, guess Capernaum. That's your best guess. So, Capernaum exalted unto heaven. Obviously, Capernaum, the literal city, has not been lifted up into heaven. And this is in the present tense right then. It had not been lifted up to heaven. So that's got to be some sort of metaphorical speech, probably speaking about the spiritual benefits that Capernaum has that nobody else has. Now, on top of that, he says, shall be brought down to hell. Now, remember that this word hell in 1611 is a word for the beyond or for the grave. It is going to die. And really it was the same of heavens as well. It's not necessarily talking about the third heaven when Capernaum is exalted into heaven. But he gives this illustration here between heaven and hell. If the mighty works, again, that is most of, the mighty works here is most of the works of Jesus, had been done in thee, which have been done in thee, had been done in Sodom, it would have remained to this day. Now, let's back up a little and see if we can get some context here. Let's try just going back to verse 20. Let's go back a few more verses here to get this. Verse 15, he that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Wherein shall I liken unto this generation? It's like children sitting in the markets calling their fellows, saying, we piped for you, you didn't dance. We mourned for you, you've not lamented. John came neither eating nor drinking. They say, he got a devil. The Son of Man comes eating and drinking. They say, he's gluttonous. You can't win. Blah, blah, blah. He's getting on to them. There's a place to do that, by the way. There's a place to say, look, enough is enough. You guys are going to have to land somewhere. You're going to have to make a position on this. And they're sort of just always again it. Then he began to upbraid the cities wherein most of his mighty works were done because they repented not. Now again, remember, this is kingdom stuff. They were told from the days of John the Baptist, repent. And they came for the show. There were certainly individuals, many individuals, who accepted him. But he begins to speak of some of these cities, Chorazin, Bethsaida. These are right near Capernaum. If the mighty works which are done in you, if they had been done in Tyre and Sidon, enemy towns, they would have repented. More tolerable for Tyre and Sidon in the day of judgment, thou Capernaum. You know, I think I would put this to a simple, to whom much is given, much is required kind of lesson. And Capernaum had much given. And yet, in the end, they really kind of aligned themselves with the Pharisaical leaders, the religious leaders, the rabbinical leaders, rather than with Jesus. And therein lies the issue. Now, comparing it with Sodom, I think the comparison there is mostly has to do with our with a decent means of giving us a comparison. The city most associated with Jesus, the city most associated with Satan. Putting these together and giving this scathing remark there. Is there anything more to it? When you come to the end and you begin to look at it, I think you would have to say that Capernaum will be judged, that generation of Capernaum will be judged for that which was given to them. They had a lot more revelation than did Sodom. Which kind of tells us there's a degree in which that the amount of knowledge given does matter. Thank you. I hope that helps. Difficult passage because, again, you see so much good about Capernaum. I agree with Randy. Capernaum is one of the best stops in Israel, in my opinion, Randy says. And I think that it is. It's a fabulous stop. I love to stop there. I could spend a day there. Okay. Moving on, we have a question from Randy in Acts chapter 7, verse 53. Oops. I get there. In Acts 7:53, Stephen speaks of angels. Let's stop there and get it if you're tuning in late again. Let me remind you, we're having a little lighting problem. Just ignore that. It's a Friday special. Acts 7:53. Who have received the law by the disposition of angels and have not kept it. It's a very interesting little word here. Let's back up. Ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Ghost as your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have your fathers not persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and the murderers. You killed the just one, the Messiah. Who have received the law by the disposition of angels and have not kept it. So Acts 7:53, Randy says, Stephen speaks of the angels. In Exodus 23:23, Moses speaks of one angel. Do you think these two passages are related? Exodus 23:23, for mine angel shall go before thee and bring thee into the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and Canaanites, Hippites, Jebusites, and I will cut them off. Mine angel. Notice that King James chooses to put that in a capital A, a reference to the pre-incarnate Lord in their interpretation, the angel of the Lord, mine angel shall go before thee. Now, are these related? I suspect I probably would not connect them immediately, and mainly because I think the Exodus 23:23 is the angel of the Lord, And is Acts 7:53 the angel of the Lord or the pre-incarnate Christ? That may be a difficult connection to make. But the Acts 7:53 passage, nonetheless, is very intriguing. You received the law by the disposition. Let's check that word here. Let's bring up, there we go. By the dietage. That, let's see, it's two words. Tage is, it's a form of tasso, to place something. Dia, thoroughly placed. The disposition, I'm having a hard time, I want to say dispensation every time. The disposition of the angels is the work of the angels where they thoroughly place something right here. That's the issue right there. So, somehow, in Acts 7:53, we're told that the angels, plural, angelos, that's one of those words that must make you pause. You have to stop and consider it. But it is one of those that it could be messengers, the prophets and whatnot. You could John the Baptist was called an angelos at one point. And so we could be talking about Isaiah and Ezekiel. You could bring that down to a human form and say, you received the law because it was thoroughly placed there. That's the disposition. They disposed of it. It left it there, dropped it off. Of angels, you could say this is Moses, this is the prophets, that's the angelos he's talking about. You could bring it down to a human form. In which case, I wouldn't tie it with Exodus 23:23, which definitely is not a human form. But you could also take it in its more spiritual form. And that's probably the more natural, is to take angelic beings had a part in distributing the law. Now, if you take it in that way, in that more angelic form, then this really is the only place in the Bible that we find out that the law was put in its place by angels, by messengers. So I can understand why and how you would connect to Exodus 23:23. And I think it's a good start. I'm just not sure it comes to a good ending of saying, yeah, these two are definitely connected. I think the connection, if we were in a court of law, which we like to play around with, if we were in a court of law, we would look at it and say, yeah, there's a little guilt by association, but that's it. Guilt by association does not make you guilty. So here's an angel mentioned in Exodus, and Exodus has to do with the law, and here's an angel mentioned with the law in Acts, and therefore they're the same. I think the connection is too loose. I think what I would say with Acts 7:53 is that either angels were involved in propagating the law among Israel, both the forefathers and the generations there, or I might even want to go down to the more humane level and say there were tons of messengers that disposed the law. The disposition of messengers, from Moses to Joshua to the various kings, like Josiah, to the prophets, the various prophets, to John the Baptist, continuing to give the law, and that Stephen's saying, hey, you just never did hear it. I sent messengers one after another, after another, after another, and you received the law by the disposition of messengers and have not kept it. So then when the congregation heard these things, they were cut to the heart and they gnashed him with their teeth. But being full of the Holy Ghost, he looked up steadfastly into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing on the right hand. This is the next to the last straw. It's not the straw that's going to break the camel's back, but this is the next to the last straw. And his argument, his sermon has been how Israel accepts those who never received the fullness of the promise, like Abraham, that's fine. David, that's fine. But Jesus doesn't sit on the throne, and therefore he's not the Messiah. He says you need to have the same standard. Y'all are crooked in the way you're looking at this thing. And then, if that's not bad enough, then he comes and says, look, we have had you. I'm not talking about our forefathers. I'm saying you have had one messenger after another that has given the law to you, and you have not kept it. And when they heard those things, they were cut to their heart and gnashed him with their teeth. Because prior to that point in the sermon, he had been talking broadly about Israel. That's, it is one thing. Let's say we talk about America and we say it's a dark, dark day in America. Yes, it's a dark, dark day in America. And we speak against our country. That's fine. But if I start speaking against you as an American, all of a sudden, well, wait a minute. Yeah, we don't want the personal blame here. And that's what Stephen does, is he rotated this thing around and boom, he came right in. So I don't know that I would connect it to Exodus 23:23. Though again, I think it's a good place to intermediately start in the research. Excellent, Randy. Thank you for that question. Alex in well, just because there's some surveillance there, I won't say where Alex is. But the great leader of that country just came to San Francisco. I use great leader in the Chinese sense. Good to see you. I hope your travels there are going well and your business there is going well. Hey, Nancy, those memes, if you happen to have them, would you text it to me? I might want to see those. If you're still listening live, you can send those. Yeah, Randy, the more I talk through that, Randy says prophets make sense. I think it does too. Even though, of course, angelos is not the primary sense, typically the easy sense, and that's the one I want to go with, is not necessarily prophets. Normally you would go with angels, and yet there is a sense in which you have angels, and we get that taken care of there, and so that works. Looky there, Nathan got us fixed up. It's no longer a dark, dark day in the studio. Thank you, Nathan. Now, let's continue on. Oh, Randy, that's an interesting. Randy also says, have you ever done a series on the tabernacle? If not, would you consider doing one? Yeah, I actually would. I have not done a series on the tabernacle, but I have done some study on the tabernacle, and there's some fascinating things in there. I've got a book somewhere. I need to find it. It's an old book that I've never found anywhere else. It was probably self-published in the 60s, and it's called The Tabernacle Speaks. The Tabernacle Speaks. And it's got this fascinating stuff about the tabernacle from a dispensational point of view. I need to go back and find that. I'm going to keep that as a possibility in my mind there. And good, thank you, Nancy. I got those, and I'll get to that. Let's go to Valerie up in. I think this is our Canadian Valerie, who says. The one in the red country in Asia is using a VPN. I suspect you have to, don't you? Before I get to Valerie's question, let's talk about this for a moment. I heard today some congressman saying, ban TikTok, ban TikTok. there's a side of me that agrees with his sentiment, but I am a free speech guy. But then really what I think is they ban stuff in China and other countries, and the people are not that dumb. They just get a VPN and it says, I'm in Switzerland. There's ways around. You can't really ban stuff like that, Congressman. They will get it another way. And it will probably, if you ban TikTok, I'm not on TikTok, but if you ban TikTok, it'll probably encourage TikTok users. There'll probably be a greater use of TikTok if you ban TikTok. It's sort of a human nature kind of thing. So to the congressman that, I want to say, okay, yes, thank you for your sentiment, because there's some filth and disgust that goes on TikTok. A lot of anti-American woke stuff on there. And it definitely is influencing the younger generation to be woke and anti-American. And I'm sure that's what the Chinese Communist Party wants. I'm sure they filter a lot of that. If they can find some anti-American stuff, they are going to put that stuff in the algorithm up there high. So the Chinese Communist Party wants it, but I'm not so sure that banning it is going to be the solution to it. I'm not for banning certain political ideals. I'm for better education. Okay, back to Valerie. Ephesians 2, 1 and 5. You he hath quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. Verse 5. Even when you were dead in sins, hath quickened us together by Christ. By grace you are saved. We are assuming that ye and you are the uncircumcised, and we and us are the first century faithful Jews, the saints. That's a pretty decent basic evaluation of what I've got. In verse 5, the saints were dead in their sins and quickened together with Christ. And the verse contrasts that with the non-saints who were saved by grace. I am so glad you saw this, because when I was reading that was immediately what was going on in my mind. So you, he hath quickened who were dead. Verse 5. We were dead in sins. He quickened us together in Christ. By grace, ye are saved. He makes this little contrast here between the we and the ye. Now, so many people just ignore this. They make we and ye to be the same thing. But I think if you start from chapter 1, which is kind of a good place to start, if you start from chapter 1, it becomes very difficult to ignore we and ye. We did this and ye also, between verse 12 and 13. So you got to keep those we's and ye's separate. Okay, so going on, Valerie says, so verse 1 says, you, non-saints, were dead in sins and quickened. Did their quickening occur when Jesus reconciled the world at the cross, but later they were saved by grace in verse 5? When they chose to trust in Jesus? Can you explain how these verses can agree with each other and our assumptions? Well, that's such an excellent question in any concept. How do these fit with our assumptions? That's questioning our assumptions. Do these verses support the idea that we remain dead in sin until we place our faith in Jesus Christ? Young's version of 2:5 sounds very deterministic of the us. God did make us live together with Christ. Let's check that Young's in verse 5 just while we're here before I forget that little aspect of it. Let's go to Young's, verse 5. Even being dead in sin did make us to live together with Christ. Compared to when we were dead in sins, he hath quickened us. It does have a more deterministic sound to it, doesn't it? Okay, now let's back up here to verse 1 again. You, notice he hath quickened is inserted. I am going to assume that that is a faithful, correct insertion. You he hath quickened, that is made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in times past ye walked. Now this goes against the dead people can't do anything concept the Calvinists bring up. So you were dead and you walked. To be dead means to walk according to the course of the world, it looks like. Or at least that's one of the characteristics of being dead in trespasses and sins. And you walked according to the course of the world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom we all had our conversation in times past in the lust of the flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh, were made by nature children of wrath, even as the other. But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love, wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead. Now, here's the one thing that we are going to have to consider. Is there a possibility here that the we all in verse 3 would include ye and us? Because of the word all there, especially right there. Let's just put the word all in green. There we go. Ye and we all, both we and ye, had our conversation in times past, but God, who is rich in mercy for his great love, wherewith he loved us. So then the question you're going to have is this second us and this second we, does that tie into the all or not? Now, it looks like by the time you get to verse 5, it would be a little difficult because you revert back to the ye right here in verse 5. So it looks like the easiest, that's what we like, would be to go for we all, both Jews and Gentiles, let's say, had our conversation in times past. But, now let's switch back here to the standard, God who is rich in mercy for his great love, wherewithin he loved us Jews, even when us Jews were dead in sin, he quickened us together with Christ. What about you? Oh, well, by grace you are saved. He has raised us. Here again, we're going to have to determine that, determine what goes in that us. He's raised us up together and made us to sit together in heavenly places. Now, I think really, probably, other than the we all, where this is the one he makes the clarification. I don't see the reason to carry this clarification all the way on through the end of the book, because he goes again, he goes back to the we and ye. By grace ye are saved through faith. He comes back to this parenthetical in verse 8. By grace ye are saved, not of yourselves. It's the gift of God. We, again here, looks to be the normal sense in which he's using it. So through all those we's and ye's, let me say this differently. I think this we all, you can't just take this as from now on, we is all of us. Because if that was the case, then he doesn't need to go between ye and us, ye and we. It would just be we all from that point. So, What you've got is indeed a theological nuance that he's bringing between the Jews and the Gentiles. Here's what Christ has done for the Jewish people. Here's what he has done for the Gentile people. Both groups having been dead in sin. Does it support the idea that we, Valerie and I, remain in sin until we place our faith in Christ? I'm not sure it does. Could you take verse 1? You were dead. Now, if we take, that's the you plural, it's definitely the Ephesians. You were dead. Here's all the things you were walking. But down here, by grace ye are saved. Well, okay, maybe I'm gonna go back on that. It might support the idea. The Ephesians were dead until by grace they were saved. The Gentile Ephesians were dead until by grace they were saved. The Jews, they were dead. The Jewish Ephesians, if you will, the Jewish believers, they were dead, but then quickened together with Christ. But again, probably on an individual level, not meaning all Jews were no longer dead or all Gentiles were no longer dead. So I think you can use those to support the idea that we are dead in sin until we place our faith in Christ. Dead in sin being walking in sin with him. Thank you. Eimer up in Washington. Good to see you. That's interesting comment, Eimer. We're getting right back to you. All Chinese are using a VPN. Yeah, they're not dumb. There is always a loophole. This is one of the reasons I am not a big fan, again, we were talking about banning TikTok, if you're just joining in. I am not a big fan of that because it doesn't work. What the congressman needs to be talking about is the National Education Association has bankrupted American education. And because American education is so woke, that's what we produce. We produce young people who hate America. Projects like mentioned a couple weeks ago, the 1619 Project, is a hate America curriculum that's being adopted by lots of teachers across America. You want to deal with an issue? Get that out there. Publicize that. It's the New York Times doing that. It's not TikTok. It's the New York Times that says, we don't care what actual history is. Here is what we are going to teach. And that's what the congressman ought to be getting on, in my opinion. Back to Washington State, the question. Oh, wait a minute. That's I have a friend. And I can't tell what it is because I give those anonymously. So I'll come back to that here in just a little bit. We shall get there and deal with that. But I do want to come. Nancy was talking about some memes, and I've got to look at these here. Let's see. Well, that one, let's see. It's not wanting me to. One of them I have to log into Telegram to see, and I can't do that. But here's another one. Let's just check. It's a worldview issue here. Let's check this out. Whoever Michael Yon is, call sign Big Honey 6. End CCP genocides. Chinese Communist Party. CCP is WEF's World something Foundation. What is it? WEF's daddy, probably so. CCP owns Netanyahu, who is kinetically genociding Gaza, subtly genociding Israel and Jews abroad. Okay, kinetic. Kinetic energy is what? The energy that is actually going. It's in the process. It's not like potential energy. So he's actually, kinetically, genociding Gaza, subtly genociding Israel and Jews abroad. I suppose he's talking about here because he's getting his COVID-19 shot and encouraging that. World Economic Forum, that's it, the WEF. And here is all of this that connects Netanyahu and the CCP. Well, first of all, I think he's mixing a lot of things together. I don't think Netanyahu is owned by the CCP any more than he is owned by Uncle Sam. I think he's a politician probably with a lot of personal values that he wants to carry out, but he's also in a tug of war. He's a little tiny strip of land, a little tiny country, and in many ways economically dependent upon China and economically dependent on the United States, and he's got to juggle these things. Biden does the same thing. Every politician does the same thing. You know, Biden goes to China, bows down to the great leader, kisses his toe, and then turns around to the camera and says, "He's a dictator, he's a dictator." You play this political game back and forth, trying to balance the things that are actually in the world. Now, he's kinetically genociding Gaza. Not really. It is war. He's ridding Gaza of Hamas. He's telling Gazans where to go if they don't want to die. That is not genocide. That part of it is not genocide. So it appears to be a little bit of an anti-Israel kind of thing, which you can be anti-Israel. Just ought to have some good reasoning to it. And the kinetically genociding Gaza seems like a little, what's the principle? There's a name for this. Give a conversation long enough on social media and it will quickly accuse someone of being a Nazi. It just always goes there. You know, he's a Nazi. So even the terminology kinetically genociding Gaza is a little bit of I don't know who Michael Yon is, but that's a little bit of a woke position itself. That sort of seems to say, oh, Israel, calm down now, calm down. For 25 years, we've been letting them kill you. One by one, just here and there. We send them money to dig tunnels into your homes and blow you up. Calm down, though. It's okay because, you know, they're Gazans. Instead of saying Hamas has been genocidal to its own people. Hamas has taken the money, lined their coffers with it, stuck their middle finger in the face of the world and says, we hate Jews and want them dead, every single one. That's their stated policy. We want Jews dead. Every Jew. We don't want a single Jew. And yet I see all these woke people coming in and, oh, well, you know, they only killed 120 and now they've killed 11,000 over here. This isn't fair. Hamas needs to die, burn in hell today. That's what needs to happen. Every one of them. That's what every single preacher, every single world leader needs to say. Hamas has got to come to a total destruction. Not a single member left alive. None. Zilch. Nada. And none of this, it's kinetically genociding Gaza. Now, subtly genociding Israel? Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, that's the stupid vaccine thing that, you know, he and all the other world leaders promote. But you'll have to say that about Donald Trump too, if you go there, because you know you can get pictures of him getting his stupid shot too. Interesting memes there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, and on Friday we have to do a little bit of Psychobabble with Dr. White. And this is the time of the program when Dr. White comes out and for free gives psychological information. And here we go. I have a friend who's embarrassed to go places with her husband, where she has a chance of running into someone she may know. Family is different because they have known him forever. His hygiene is so bad he doesn't want to do anything about it, even when he has been confronted about it. Over and over, she has stopped saying anything because he says, take me as I am. I'm not trying to impress anyone. He had a good hygiene when they were married many years ago. Why can't she accept that? People tell her it's no reflection on her. She tells me people feel sorry for her and she doesn't want that. Whose problem is this and why do they feel so differently about it? What's really going on here? Okay. First of all, let me say a little bit, hygiene can be in the eye of the beholder. That is to say, there's various degrees of hygiene. But I am going to assume when we say his hygiene is so bad and he doesn't want to do anything about it, I'm going to assume that this means he really has become somewhat socially unacceptable because his hair is unkempt, his face is unshaven, his clothing is crumpled and does not match and maybe is dirty and perhaps he has a bit of odor about him, or he just has that look of, whoa, you are not a clean man. So let's get beyond, he's just a little step below, kind of looks like, you know, maybe not professional. Let's give that one up, and if that's the case, let's say, you know, some guys want to dress up and look fine and other guys don't. But let's assume this really is bad hygiene. You can smell it, you can see it. Now, does she have the right to be embarrassed about this? Yeah, she does. And it looks like she has confronted him over and over. And his viewpoint is, I'm not trying to impress anyone. Probably, let me speak to the man for just a moment, if he'll listen to me. Get both of you together here. Come here. You ought to be trying to impress somebody. You really ought to. I know maybe you don't need to. I know that maybe you're not trying to get a job. I know that maybe you're not trying to you know, win friends and influence people. I know you're not running for public office. You may be retired. I don't know. And so, you know, what it is, what it is. I know all that. But you have a name that you do not want associated with garbage and trash. You ought to care about that because your name is going with you. Someday someone is going to stand at the funeral and they're going to say, finally, we got him dressed up. Finally, we got him clean. That's not what you want. You want a better reputation for yourself than that. And you also want you want your children to be proud of you. You want your grandchildren to be proud of you. And I can tell you, if you've got grandchildren, they do know whether or not you are presentable. Even if they're 4 years old, they know whether or not you're presentable. So you embarrass your wife, she's in it for better or for worse. But your kids aren't. And your grandkids aren't. And for that matter, your neighbors aren't. And there is a degree in which you ought to take some pride in yourself and say, you know what? It wouldn't be that hard for me just to clean up just a little bit and look nice. I happen to believe that this world needs more beauty. So quit being ugly. This world needs some things that smell good. So quit stinking. It's so simple for you to step up. Your wife would love you for it. Your children would love you for it. Your neighbors would love you for it. The cashier would love you for it. People are making a determination about you because I'm not trying to impress anyone. You're not impressing them. You are depressing them. You're turning them off. They don't want to have anything to do with you. They want to stand back. So, hey, it's a simple fix. It's a lot simpler than some addiction you might have. Like, okay, give me a new shirt, honey. Put on your red shoes, Ruby, we're going dancing. That's a simple fix for your wife. So if I was your wife, I'd be embarrassed too. I can tell you one of the things I'm proud of my wife is when she goes out, she looks nice. Sometimes I think, do we have to spend that much money for your hair fixing, for your new outfit, for your accessories? Do we have to? But then I notice she always looks nice when she's out in public, and that makes me look good. Now, if my wife went out in a house coat and her hair in curlers, I would be embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed enough, I'd probably tell her something. Now, does she need to just accept it? No, not any more than if you were an alcoholic. I think it's reality. People do this. And furthermore, let me just say, if the hygiene is so bad that there's body odor and things like this, that is just selfish and rude. And that ought to be discarded. There's my psychobabble. So to the wife, I would say, tell your husband, I'm embarrassed to go out with you. Sorry. I'd love to go out and eat, but I'm not going with you looking like that. I can tell you, my wife tells me that sometimes. You're not wearing that, are you? A second one. I have a friend who thinks the Bible contradicts because the feeding of the 5,000. John saved a boy. John says a boy provided the fish, where Matthew, Mark, and Luke say the disciples provided the fish. I think this is one of those that we could get into it and say, actually, both of those can be true. I think you could reconcile those, but let's not even try to reconcile those. I think that we would say that, here's what I would want to say. I would want to say, hey, friend, if you want to reject the Bible, there's much better reasons. That one is kindergarten stuff. let's bring some of the stuff of substance here. Let's deal with the other things that we really do need to deal with and bring those down, rather than this sort of, I'll call it nitpicky stuff. I happen to be persnickety, and I want things to match perfectly. I believe we can match these perfectly. The lunch clearly comes from the boy. All the Gospels are going to share that. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Synoptic Gospels. The lunch comes from the boy. Who hands it off? I am not going to call the Bible a book of contradiction because they come at a story from a different point of view. If you want, to this friend I would speak directly, I can call you a flip-flopper and contradictory in everything you say just by looking at what you say from a different point of view. And you would say, that's not honest, that's dishonesty. And I would say, absolutely, it would be dishonesty. So deal with the scriptures. If you want to reject the scriptures just because you feel like it, go ahead. I reject it, but be honest with it. Own it. I reject it because I feel like it. But if you want to reject it on some real substantive grounds, there's better arguments out there, honestly. Get one that is very difficult to deal with and go with that one. I'm not going to tell you what they are because I think you should do the research yourself. But you tell me, I reject the Bible because it contradicts itself in the story of the feeding of the 5,000. I would say, you just want to reject the Bible. And I would rather you own that. I'd rather you say, yeah, I just don't like the Bible. That would show more integrity on your part than this point of view, that point of view. Everybody knows the boy had the lunch. Very clear. Okay, I'm out of time today. I do want to say one thing to you, and that is that we've got this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Mountain. My friend Boaz, our tour guide in Israel, is going to be on doing a Zoom conference about security in Israel, especially going to be talking about northern Israel and some things that go on there. You do need to send off for an invitation. Here's how you do it. Send an email to Alan, A-L-A-N, Alan, at editravel.co.il. Alan at editravel.co.il. And just say, I'd like an invitation to the Zoom meeting this afternoon. He'll give it to you, and you can go out. Yeah, you know, I agree. There used to be an etiquette, and there still is a lot of places. There used to be an etiquette for plane travel, for going to restaurants, for going to church. And we've lost that, and it's not really been a good thing for society. Well, I look forward to seeing you Sunday. I will be off next week on Ask the Theologian, and then I will be off the following Sunday due to Thanksgiving travels. That next Monday, I do plan to be on. I don't know how yet, but I plan to be on. That would be the Monday after Thanksgiving. Let's see what that date is. It is November the 27th. I'll be back. But I'll be here this Sunday to broadcast. Look forward to seeing you for that. I'm out of time. Got to run. Got a meeting I got to go to. Thanks for being here with us, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, and God bless.